The Blood Moon Highway. I've always considered myself a rational person. Ghost stories, folklore, and supernatural tales never fazed me. That was until the night I drove on the Blood Moon Highway. It was an unplanned detour. A rock slide on the main route forced me to take the old, nearly forgotten highway that snaked through the dense woods. Locals called it the Blood Moon Highway, a name I thought was derived from the red clay that lined its sides. I started the drive just as dusk was settling in. The sky was a gradient of purple and gold, with the full moon starting its ascent. The bright moonlight made it almost unnecessary for headlights. However, as the journey progressed, an eerie red hue began tinting the moon. The fabled blood moon, I realized. My old radio buzzed to life, interrupting the silence. For those driving tonight, especially near the old forest route, stay safe. The legends about the Blood Moon Highway might just be legends, but why take chances? The announcer's voice had a playful tone, but the message left me unsettled. Laughing it off, I continued driving, taking in the haunting beauty of the blood moon. But as minutes turned to hours, I began to notice that the forest around seemed off. Shadows danced, and the trees seemed to whisper secrets. Suddenly, a pale apparition materialized on the road ahead. It was so sudden, so vivid. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt inches from the spectral figure. My heart raced. It was a woman, her dress flowing as if underwater, her eyes hollow but accusatory. The stories were true. Shaken, I tried starting the car, but it sputtered and died. The apparition moved closer, her mouth moving as if trying to communicate, but no sound emerged. In her wake, the road seemed to bleed, the red clay turning to a thick crimson liquid. I had to think quickly. My old car had a manual transmission. If I could roll down the hill and pop the clutch, maybe, just maybe, I could jump-start the engine. As the specter reached out, her fingers just brushing against my window, I released the handbrake. The car jolted forward, gaining momentum. I popped the clutch. The engine roared to life. With a surge of adrenaline, I sped away, leaving the phantom behind. But I knew the ordeal wasn't over. The blood moon shone even brighter, casting the highway in a terrifying glow. And then they came, souls of those who had perished here, each one trying to communicate their agony, their stories. One ghostly figure after another appeared on the road, causing me to swerve repeatedly. A soldier with a bleeding wound, a child with tearful eyes, an old man with a look of sheer regret. Then, as I rounded a sharp bend, the original apparition, the woman, stood there again. Beside her, a car wreck, and a figure, eerily familiar. Me. The realization hit like a ton of bricks. Was this a vision of my future? I decided to face her. Stopping the car, I stepped out. The night air was cold, the silence pierced only by the distant howls of the creatures in the forest. "Who are you? What do you want?" I demanded. Her lips moved, and this time a faint whisper reached my ears. "Save us." Behind her, the myriad souls murmured in agreement, their voices a chorus of pain and plea. I understood. This highway trapped souls, and the blood moon was the conduit of their energy. But how could I save them? Driven by a newfound determination, I remembered an old chapel nearby. If legends held any truth, consecrated ground could offer reprieve to restless souls. "I promise to free you," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. The apparition nodded, stepping aside. As I drove toward the chapel, the spirits guided me, keeping me safe from the treacherous road's pitfalls. Reaching the chapel, I found it in ruins, but the old bell tower stood tall, casting a long shadow. With all my might, I rang the bell. Its somber toll echoed through the night, resonating with the energy of the blood moon. The ground trembled, and a vortex of light spiraled towards the sky. One by one, the spirits ascended, their forms turning luminous, faces reflecting peace. The woman was the last to go. She mouthed a silent "thank you" before vanishing. Exhausted, I slumped to the ground. The blood moon's red hue faded, revealing its regular silver brilliance. The highway was silent, the eerie weight lifted. The next morning I drove back home, my perspective forever changed. The Blood Moon Highway remained, but its curse was broken. Weeks later, I returned to erect a memorial, paying homage to the lost souls. Locals spoke of the night the chapel bell rang and the haunted highway was finally cleansed. From that day on, every time I looked up at the moon, I remembered the souls I encountered and the promise I kept. The Blood Moon Highway was no longer a road of death and despair, but a testament to redemption and hope.